Singapore firms say they want free trade agreements with a wider scope in areas like the digital economy and services trade. Now, they're also looking for guidance on tapping FTAs. And that's according to a research study on manufacturing businesses led by the National University of Singapore. Now, that survey aims to highlight the challenges they face and what's needed to overcome them. It polled more than 2,300 companies from 7 Southeast Asian economies from 2023 to 2024. Now, both small and large Singapore firms faced hurdles while expanding overseas, and these include cost pressures and complex procedures. While free trade agreements make investments easier, such small firms have limited use for them.
How can companies leverage on the FTAs to increase their overseas market share of exports? The FTAs agreement, huge documents, SMEs don't have the manpower. They cannot dedicate even one personnel, for example, to actually be a specialist in looking at the FTA's rules and how they can leverage on that.
So in the next 3 years, almost 90% of local companies plan to automate up to half of their processes, and they aim to boost productivity by using AI or industrial robots. With such moves, firms also expect limited impact on employment. And when it comes to going green, firms say they'll respond to changing customer expectations for sustainable products or services. 20% are willing to spend more on green practices, and these include using clean energy or improving wastewater treatment when major clients demand it. They also plan to invest 15% or more of their operating costs on green efforts. Well, nearly 9 in 10 firms surveyed also want more streamlined regulations and better digital connectivity within the region. And that's according to that same study by NUS. And these are among the ways to improve coordination within the ASEAN economic community. Even in a digital economy, some analysts say it's time to relook the AEC's priorities. Rachel Matthew with more.
For this manufacturing firm, the customs clearance procedure for their goods takes nearly a week before the items can be shipped out to their regional factories. But using an electronic customs clearance form introduced by the ASEAN Economic Community, the process is almost immediate.
It has allowed us to in a way, cut down the delivery time that we have to our customers in the region. It also allows us for the companies, the factories that we have in Singapore, Malaysia and Vietnam to be able to collaborate with one another. So it has allowed us to be able to coordinate our production, our logistics and sales.
Established a decade ago, the AEC aimed to create a single regional market. Among its goals was to facilitate the flow of goods, talent and investments. But several barriers still exist.
So we actually realized individual countries still have their own regulatory framework. The technical difference between these standards are very minimal. But because of this non-recognition of standards across countries, we have to recertify the same product, all right, which is costly and also time-consuming.
A research study on manufacturing businesses led by the National University of Singapore has also echoed the need for AEC to reflect changing business needs. Firms want greater compatibility of digital systems across ASEAN. They're also hoping for an expanded market access. Close to 9 in 10 of Singapore firms also say there's a need for more agile digital trade rules and greater collaboration within the region. Amid economic turmoil, one analyst says the AEC needs to address bottlenecks. To stay relevant, pain points like the digital divide must also be looked at.
ASEAN policymakers need to continue focusing or think regionally rather than saying, well, it's a zero-sum game. And that's basically not productive, right? And I think we do have very vibrant global value chains in this region. They're also plugged to China and the US. Let's work on the various ASEAN free trade agreements that we have.
He adds systematic changes have to be made. These include moving from a consensus decision-making process to a general agreement to start pilot projects.
Well, here to share more on the survey findings are Kok Ping Soon, CEO of the Singapore Business Federation, and Lennon Tan, President of the Singapore Manufacturing Federation. Mr. Kok, to you first. Now, one of the figures that stood out were 9 in 10 out of the firms in Singapore are actually calling for more streamlined regulations as well as stronger digital connectivity, so to speak, within ASEAN. Now, are these the same points that jumped out to you? And what does it tell us about how local businesses are responding to the current tough economic situation?
Thanks, Jill, for the question. I think when I look at the survey and the results, I think three things stood out to me, other than the point that you say. Number one, it's good to see that manufacturing companies are embracing digitalization and automation. Although it's quite interesting that the study says that Singapore companies are a bit further behind from Southeast Asia, and we should try to understand that. The second thing is good to know that our companies are responding to regulatory compliance and customer expectation and getting onto decarbonization. And the third one, which is related to what you say, which is surprising to me, they say only 30% of Singapore companies are making use of FTA. And that kind of has a bit of dissonance from what we found out. We did a survey last year and it was reported that 3 in 4 companies actually benefited through improved market access through FTAs.
That's interesting because FTA is certainly a common theme throughout most of what our interview said. But, let me turn it to you, Mr. Tan. The pressing challenges that are facing your sector, the local manufacturers are facing in automation, perhaps regulation hurdles. What are they telling you?
Well, Jill, I think most of them are saying that for them, costs, they are managing costs. And obviously, one of the way to manage costs is to increase your productivity. So when we see that some of the SMEs are finding difficulty in fully automating their processes, I think one of the reasons is because of their skill. I think when we surveyed, most of them are SMEs telling us that their size and as well as their ROI, based on their market size as well as their time frame, find it difficult for them to make that kind of investments.
Right.
Also for the regulation portion, increasingly firms are saying that, look, there are more compliance right now. Right now, as more companies look into digitization, AI, and so on, they have to now embark on cyber mark secure kind of certification. Of course, to access to better markets as well as bigger market size, they also need to attain sustainability certification. So some of this, and also tax regulations, that when they cross over the border, they need to manage that. So they are finding
compliance and tax smart. I mean, that's a whole another animal that has to be tamed. But, I have to ask you about the FTAs because that was consistent throughout the package our reporter just produced there. Look, they're looking for help. All right. So how do you think SMF is going to support them in this area?
I think if you look at what they are telling us, about 20% of them says that they can't find a FTA that's relevant to them. And bear in mind that these are the SMEs bosses talking, and the MNCs would have their team of accountants and as well as tax specialists to help them. The SMEs are saying that perhaps their volume is too small to be bothered with FTAs. And about 10% of them say that I don't know how to do it, right? So I think by and large we are telling them, look, you are putting money on the table, right? FTAs are there to help you, bring your business internationally. And there are many of them, once you fully understand them, you can leverage on.
Okay. I want to chime in to say, actually, help is out there.
Yes.
So I'm happy to say the SBF has set up the Center for Future of Trade and Investment. We call it C40 last July. And when they approach FTA, I have a team of FTA advisors that can actually help unpack what is the impact of the tariffs to them, how they can navigate the rules of origin, get a manufacturing cost statement. And in fact, when we did the survey, last year we issued about 60 of these advisories. This year in Q2 after Liberation Day, the number of advisories that we gave was 90. So companies should really step forward, to reach out to my trade advisors to help them understand some of these.
Very good to know that. The other area that I want to talk to you about is the digitalization push. Now, here is where maybe the correlation you need to explain a bit about what you're finding and what's being said out there. It's a process that you've been pushing, but it's not as fast as you'd like it. I mean, why aren't the wheels turning and what can you do to grease it a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely right. When it comes to digitalization, we always say it's no longer an option. But But the hurdles that SME face are very real. Yeah. You ask SMEs, the constant thing they say, number one, no money, no talent, no time. These are the three things they always have now, which is why I think SBF has been working with SMF as well as government agencies to roll out many programs. One of them is a CTO as a service, where they can engage a CTO to kind of understand what's the problem and what's the solution. But what's the problem? The problem is helping the SME to cross the chasm between knowing what to do and actually doing it. Yeah. So that is really the crux of it. Yeah. But this is where I really believe that we can activate the larger ecosystem to help. Many of the problems of the digitalization projects that SMEs implement are not complicated. It's not the mega million SAP implementation. They're just trying to find the right system for CRM and all that. Okay. Actually, all these projects, I believe, can be implemented even by interns, from the polys and the universities. So the question is, we have this huge investment in PET and CET. How can we gear them to match it with the needs of companies so that this system can be used to solve actually industry problems?
All right. I guess the will needs to be there to make that final last mile leap, right? Yeah. Indeed. Okay. It might be a similar situation when local manufacturers come to automation. Right, this is an area that we are told Singapore's a bit more conservative compared to its neighbours. Can they afford to be so conservative?
Well, Jill, it's not that Singapore companies or Singapore SMEs doesn't automate or don't automate. We are saying the degree of automation, so between 1 to 100, about 70% of them does less than 25%, right? So between 1 to 25% they automate. But when you look, but they are not gaining the full productivity gain by just automating part of that processes. So some reason why they don't fully utilize this new advantage of automation, especially with the infusion of AI as well as data and so on. It's because I think that we, relatively speaking, our SMBs are small size, and their ROI, when you calculate their business size, it's a bit long, right? And the quantum to automate is often higher than what our government grants can offer, right? And the second reason is that comparatively we have a fairly skilled and stable workforce. So in places whereby you have frequent turnover, you really have a problem, and so our workforce is fairly stable. Also, a culture of risk. Yeah. I think SME bosses are a little bit. They prefer quality as well as consistency rather than speed.
Well, I did want to get to future-proofing our regional business. Perhaps another time we'll have you back in again. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I've been speaking there with Kok Ping Soon from the Singapore Business Federation and Lennon Tan from the Singapore Manufacturing Federation.